Loki's probably my least favorite show.
When we first started out, we had little lapel mics that sound bad. Now we still sound bad, but it's a little bit better.
The MCU is dead.
$4.8 billion.
If they just rushed it together, we'd have the DC universe.
Right, exactly. Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
And today we are going over our Marvel Phase 4 recap along with our thoughts.
3, 2, 1, action. All right, Andrew, Phase 4 of the MCU has wrapped up with Wakanda Forever. Black Panther Wakanda Forever was the last movie that was coming out. We still do have the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special that's coming out Thanksgiving week. But other than that, the big movies are all done. Everything's wrapped up. There was a lot of new things with Phase 4. We got introduced to TV shows for the first time. That's kind of plugging their new platform of Disney+. Overall thoughts of Phase 4?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk about what was actually in Phase 4, what we thought about it. We're going to compare it financially to the previous phases, especially Phase 3.
We got a lot of numbers.
Yeah, so we're going to look at a lot of stuff here. We're going to talk about what they're setting up. So if you're interested in how Phase 3 or how Phase 4 performed versus other phases, what they might be setting up in the MCU, and what kind of little Easter eggs you might have missed, then go ahead and make sure to check out the rest of this video because that's what we're going to get into. But my personal thoughts on Phase 4 were that it was a lot of fun and a whole lot of content, especially with the TV show content. So in terms of minutes, it was a lot. We got to see a lot of fun new characters, introduced to the whole idea and concept of the multiverse. So there's some movies that I love, but overall it's not as good to me as some of the previous phases, which is bound to happen, right? Coming off Phase 3, which was like the biggest phase of the MCU. The Infinity Saga has Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame coming out back-to-back years. So bound to automatically compare that to the last thing that came out. And it's also bound to have a rough time as basically like a fresh start and rebirth after a whole saga is completed. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to compare to Phase 3. Phase 3 has 12 movies. And Phase 4, I believe, has 6 movies. So it's like double in size. Phase 4 has also only lasted 2 years. It's been very fast. It's the shortest phase that we have gotten. But like you said, we got a bunch of content within this. So they're definitely going that quantity route.
Feels like longer.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? But Phase 4 started in 2021, and it kicked off with a TV show, WandaVision. So I'm going to quickly name out every project of Phase 4 so we kind of know what's on the board, and then we'll kind of pick and choose what we want to talk about from there. So there were 17 projects in a span of 2 years. Okay, so we got WandaVision, TV show, came out in January of 2021. Falcon Winter Soldier was the next TV show to come out. And then we had Loki, third TV show. Black Widow was the first movie of this phase. We had What If, which was the first animated piece of content that we got that's within the MCU. So that was pretty cool. We moved on to Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings movie. And then we have Eternals, which was another movie. Hawkeye, the TV show. Spider-Man No Way Home, where all 3 Spider-Man met up. And then we have Moon Knight, great TV show. Wish it was a movie. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, the movie. Another show, we have Miss Marvel, and then we go to Thor, Love and Thunder movie. She-Hulk, the show. We have Werewolf by Night, which was like an hour special. And then Black Panther, Wakanda Forever was the final movie. And then we've yet to see the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, which again comes out in a few weeks.
And features Kevin Bacon.
Boom.
That's a whole lot of content when you read it out like that. It's hard to imagine that. I mean, Phase 3 had more in terms of movies, but obviously with the introduction of TV shows, I mean, we had 3 shows before we even had a movie at the beginning of Phase 4. So they tied that together really well, like where our content felt like it was never ending. We basically had one show a week for like 4 or 5 straight months with just some like a week or two gap between some of the seasons coming out,
right,
from WandaVision to Falcon and the Winter Soldier to Loki. Pretty incredible that they found a way to like give us content so nonstop, but it also lends to something that I'm going to touch on a lot here about the new phase 4 is the TV shows feeling like just drawn out versions of movies, like lower budget, drawn out. The plot doesn't feel as organized because they're stretching it out into the 8-episode format, 45-minute episodes. So like it doesn't have the same organized feel as the movie, plus them trying to shoehorn in all these new characters and tie everything in. So I have a list here of the new characters that I'll go over real quick. So they're clearly pushing the Young Avengers, right? If you don't know what the Young Avengers are, it's basically like Marvel's version of the Teen Titans. So it's either sidekicks or younger versions of our main heroes, and we've seen a bunch of them. We haven't, to my knowledge, got any confirmed content called Young Avengers so far, but all these characters are comic book appearances in the Young Avengers at some point. So WandaVision gave us Tommy and Billy Maximoff, who become Wiccan and Speed in the Young Avengers. Falcon and Winter Soldier gave us Patriot, which is the grandson of Isaiah Bradley. His real name, Patriot's name, is Elijah Bradley. He has a small appearance in that, the little boy that talks to Falcon. And then Loki gave us young Loki. Hawkeye obviously gave us Kate Bishop. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, gave us America Chavez. And then Black Panther 2, or Wakanda Forever, potentially gave us Riri Williams. Ironheart could be involved with the Young Avengers. Kamala Khan from Miss Marvel, as also her titular character, Miss Marvel, could be involved with the Young Avengers. And then some less likely ones, since we've seen Kang the Conqueror, a version of him is Nathaniel Richards as Iron Lad. And we already know there's multiple versions of Kang throughout the multiverse. That's been established, so that's a possibility. Vision is involved with the Young Avengers, and we've seen White Vision. And then Cassie, Scott Lang's daughter, is going to be Stature. We know she's going to be heavily involved in Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, so she could potentially be a Young Avenger as well. So they're building a second team, which, if they do it correctly, is another franchise where you've got a Young Avengers movie come out, $1 billion, Avengers movie come out, $1 billion.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that was one of the complaints of Phase 4 is that like things aren't connected and blah blah blah. But with a little bit more research, you can see that things are connected. It's just we haven't seen the payoff yet. It's still down the road, kind of like when Iron Man was first coming out, and it was Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, and then Iron Man again. It was like, are they connected? Like, you didn't really know. And then it was Civil War came out, and you're like, Captain America came out, and then you're like, oh, like, I think they're building all to like one big movie. That's kind of cool, right? Like, there wasn't any expectation of it, which made it feel like it was more natural, right? But now we're like, what's the payoff? What's going to happen? Like, how is this connected to this? Why can't I see it right away, Yeah.
We're always looking for the next Avengers movie, which devastating that there's not going to be an Avengers movie in Phase 5. So we're going 2 whole phases, potentially like 30, not necessarily films, but 30 projects where we don't have an Avengers movie, which is hard for a lot of people to swallow, myself included, because the MCU is known for being connected. It revolutionized film by creating a universe.
Yeah, it takes time to set up all these stories and characters, because if they would just rush that together, it's like we wouldn't have any connection to these Young Avengers.
Yeah, if they just rushed it together, we'd have the DC universe.
Right, exactly. And it's moving at a much faster pace than it was in Phase 1. Like, we only had, 6 characters? 4 of them only had their own movie, when we got the Avengers. So, like, now there's, like you said, a bunch. There's a ton. Potentially
multiple teams. I mean, if they have an X-Men franchise and they have a team-up movie and a Fantastic Four team-up movie, Young Avengers and... could call them the old Avengers. That's $4 billion franchises or individual movies.
And what else has been introduced? The Thunderbolts.
Yeah. So the Thunderbolts, I have a list of their team as well. So they've been being set up throughout. So the Thunderbolts includes Bucky Barnes and U.S. Agent, who are both in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, set up through that show, as well as Then you have Black Widow setting up Red Guardian and Taskmaster and Yelena. And then you have Ant-Man and the Wasp, which gave us Ghost for the Thunderbolts. And then we have Val Demings as well, who's made a bunch of appearances throughout in Black Widow post-credit scene. Bless you. In these sneezes, man, they're like shotguns.
They're gonna be good today.
So we've got Val Demings appearing in a couple things. Like I said, Black Widow and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and just some small appearances. She's going to be kind of bringing this team together. If you don't know what the Thunderbolts are, they're kind of like, again, I'm going to reference DC because we already have a Suicide Squad movie explaining what that team is. They're kind of like a team of Suicide Squad that are villains who are morally ambiguous and who are kind of in a way seeking redemption. So they're kind of like a team of anti-heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even like being forced into being a hero or something along those lines, you know, where things are getting blurred a little bit, or they go into a mission to where like it could go bad.
Yeah. Well, we've also too had like, some of these characters are not pure villains, right? Taskmaster, for example, is being controlled. But we've also got really pure villains in their original appearances, Baron Zemo and Abomination, who are traditionally involved with the Thunderbolts, but their appearances in the MCU as of late kind of indicate that they would be coming back, right? Because they brought them back for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for Baron Zemo, and they brought Abomination back for She-Hulk. So this would all indicate to us that they're going to be involved in the Thunderbolts as well, because it's why bring them back otherwise. But they haven't been officially announced as part of the team yet, so we'll see. But that just goes to show what they're setting up. What they're telling us is only part of it. You know, they've announced the cast of team members for the Thunderbolts. But, like, come on, you're not going to put Baron Zemo in there when he is always involved in the comic books.
Yeah. Or even Abomination. Like, let's see an angry Hulk-esque character. You know, like, we haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah. He's going to be meditating. Bring him back.
All right, Andrew. We got shows. We got movies. What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? What would you do differently? You know, like, what are your overall thoughts of these projects individually?
Yeah, I think that one thing I would probably do differently is I think right now they're prioritizing money and quantity and toys necessarily over quality. Not that I think they're letting quality slip entirely by the wayside. They're putting a lot of effort into this, but I don't think that their highest priority is for everything to be the most contiguous, or everything to be of, we need this Moon Knight movie to be, I think there's a level where they're saying, let's get Moon Knight out. You know, if we
test the waters with it.
We have a budget, and that is the budget. So, you know, either write it to the budget, or maybe we'll put in some subpar CGI in there. I think that it was, the suit for Moon Knight definitely should have been practical, but in some ways it's actually easier to use CGI than practical when it comes to, you know, stunts and things like that. So
I actually just rewatched Moon Knight. It's a fantastic show. It's good. It really is. The character has so much depth to him.
Oscar Isaac brilliantly portrays it.
Exactly. There's a lot of turmoil going on within. And the CGI didn't look as bad the second time. And I think it was because my expectations were a little bit lower going in the second time. And I was there, and I went in watching it more for the story and Oscar Isaac's performance, rather than like, I want to see the coolest fight in the MCU in this show.
Because you know,
now,
every time the coolest fight was coming along, he blacked out.
Yeah. But watching it the second time and just accepting the fact that this is what it is, it was pretty good. I think it was the best show, up there with Loki for me, like top 2, top 1 of the shows that came out. Definitely one of my favorite characters that we got going forward in the MCU. I really do wish that they made this a movie instead.
Yeah, that ties into my kind of backseat directing critique. If I were to sit in the director's chair, I would change most of these shows to movies. I understand that they're pushing Disney Plus and that they have to sell subscriptions to that if they're going to have Disney Plus, but I think they're sacrificing things that could have been phenomenal movies. Like, when you look at it as a piece of art, I think that that Moon Knight would be more of what it's meant to be in a movie rather than the lengthy TV show format they went with. And obviously the places they had to cut back in terms of budget, like there should have been a big fight at the end of the first episode when he encounters that monster. But instead
we saw the stunt double going through like the fight that would have been.
Yeah, there's videos online of them blocking this stunt and like showing how he was actually going to fight the monster.
Yeah.
But instead, all we get is kind of like the hallway shot with, which is still cool, but
right.
he's already at this point blacked out of every fight up until this point,
right.
which I enjoyed as a stylistic choice. If at the end of the episode you were gonna give the payoff, yes. And they cut away from the payoff too, and they did that to you at the end of this show as well, which is my biggest critique with Moon Knight. Even though Moon Knight's probably also my favorite show, right up there with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Loki's probably my least favorite show, but unlike you, but Falcon and the Winter Soldier is probably up there for my favorite, right next to Moon Knight. And I think that Moon Knight was really cut short by the fact that the ultimate climax of the show, he blacked out for his fight with the main villain of the show, Ethan Hawke's character.
I think part of it too is just like expectation going in, you know, like we are just coming off of Phase 3, which is like one of the most epic things to ever be brought to the screen, you know, and now we have this show that we're expecting the same thing, but it's just not there, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, the thing that made Moon Knight not be a top tier show is that there was lack of fights and some of the CGI, you could tell was CGI. But like the story itself was really fascinating, you know, and I encourage you to go watch it with that in mind, like just going for the story, because it's good. Because like take our setup, you know, like we started this thing, our podcast, with the thought of like, hey, let's just put out our content and we'll get better as we go along, you know. And like, we'll slowly upgrade to new mics. Like when we first started out, we had little lapel mics that sound bad. Now we still sound bad, but it's a little bit better, you know. And like we got an extra light. We got, you know, like we're slowly building up. But the expectation is that we're coming off of something that was so epic for the Phase 3, you know?
Yeah. So the expectation is completely different. I see what you're saying. It's hard. You can't always just keep going up and up and up.
Yeah.
You have to hit a plateau. You have to go down and up. So, but I think that's kind of where they're at maybe with the TV shows then, if you look at it that way. I guess that could be the silver lining or the optimistic point of view. But I'm just not a big fan of the TV show format. It feels very stretched out. It feels forced for the name of Disney Plus.
I have a little bit of a backseat directing thing. So you said a lot of these shows could be movies, and it would serve the story better. I also think putting a little bit more time and resources into the shows that you are going to make could elevate those shows. Take Daredevil, for example. That was a show. And quite frankly, I want to keep it the show. You know, the way that it was. Like if I had to go back and they made a movie instead. Like the show is fantastic. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So if they could put that level into something like Moon Knight, okay, let's keep it a show. You know, but if not, then like, all right, I don't want to just see content to see content, you know?
Yeah, it's, for me, like, I love the big team ups, but the other movies that get you there aren't just stepping stones to the team up. The other movies, in order for the team up movies to have to matter,
they're good on their own.
Yeah, the other content has to stand alone. And it's felt very much like they have their 10-year plan and they're focused on like hitting those beats for sure and getting to that point. I think that there's a lot of cool stuff about Phase 4. We've talked about this before, they're letting new directors, not necessarily new directors, but directors they haven't worked with before, stretch their legs in the MCU and show what they can do and play with different styles. You know, Multiverse of Madness is a very different style. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is a very different style. There's resonant themes.
Shang-Chi.
Yeah. So there also are overarching themes, and everything in this universe has been connected, you know? They talk about the themes. I've seen a lot of people recently talking about themes of grief and loss, which tie in with the loss the world experienced during Thanos' snap, and then the difficulties of getting them back. So they've touched on all those themes and looking down every every single movie on this list, you know, from WandaVision, that's the loss of Vision, and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that's losing Captain America and the symbol that he was, you know, all the way down, going down to Thor: Love and Thunder's the loss of Jane, you know, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, the loss of T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman. So it's throughout, it's tied, it's connected. They're still doing a brilliant job of all that. You know, the MCU is not dead like some people would have you believe. It's alive and thriving, and it's just
different.
Different.
Yeah, it's just different. And I think over the years they'll probably iron out the shows a little bit more too. Like if that's something that they decide to keep going with, I'm sure they're hearing at all of us. You know, it seems like that we have a say. A little bit,
this is the age of them hearing us. I don't think that the Spider-Man crossover would have ever happened if they didn't want to please the fans as badly as they do now.
Yeah. So what is your favorite movie?
It's such a tough choice between Shang-Chi and Spider-Man No Way Home, but I think I'm going to say Spider-Man No Way Home for Phase 4, just because it has such an unfair advantage. You know, getting to see Toby and Andrew.
It's got a lot of nostalgia behind it, and that's a very powerful weapon.
The movie's also, like, very much in tune with not necessarily constant action, but keeping you enthralled in it all the way through, like, for the whole 2.5 hours, just these big epic fight scenes, and then they slow it down. And when they slow it down, you're drawn into the emotion.
Yeah.
And that builds up the fight scenes, which builds up the emotion. And like they have like this ebb and flow with that you feel from, you know, the fight with Green Goblin to the loss of Aunt May, you know, to the next fight with the Statue of Liberty, to the cathartic, you know, moments for Andrew Garfield and Toby stopping, you know. So Toby saves Green Goblin, which he couldn't do in his world, and Andrew Garfield saves, MJ, which he couldn't save Gwen Stacy. So it's really, really beautiful film. But I don't think many people would argue with me on that. I think that they've kind of MCU stood behind Spider-Man and Tom Holland as like their Avengers movie, basically, for Phase 4, like the epic grandiose scale of that film. That was their Avengers movie when they didn't have an Avengers movie right now. It had a ton of heroes in it because we had 3 Spider-Men. It had, you know, like 6, 7 villains. So everyone went to theaters to see it. I think that was their like big team up, big, huge movie for this phase, and their de facto Avengers. So what did you think was your favorite of Phase 4?
My top 3 is Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Eternals. I really liked Eternals. I think a lot of people are sleeping on that movie a little bit. I'm going to talk about that movie a little bit more since you kind of already touched on the Spider-Man movie. I agree with everything you said about that movie. It's a good movie.
Ditto.
Yeah. Eternals, I think they did a great job introducing the 6 or 7 new characters that no one's ever heard of. I think they balanced everyone's screen time and character development really well, to where the whole time I wasn't like, who is this person, or why are they getting so much time, or whatever. The story felt good and very similar, like you said, in Spider-Man. There was a lot of constant action and then slower parts, but in the slower parts they were constantly moving the story forward, you know.
I was shocked by how low that movie's revenue was.
Yeah.
I thought it was really enjoyable. I mean, I haven't seen it since, but...
Yeah, I've watched it once after we went to theaters with my wife, and it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it, and Shang-Chi is really cool because the stunts are amazing, right? And then, of course, all of the culture and tradition that's brought into the movie. And
first Asian American superhero in the MCU.
Yeah.
Huge.
So I feel like my rankings for those 3 kind of fluctuate. I think most of the time I have Shang-Chi at the top, but Spider-Man No Way Home's a lot of fun, and then the Eternals I just think is a great balance of all these new characters, and I love the Superman-esque character too, like Icarus, just watching him fly around, how effortlessly he moves and stuff is just really cool.
Makari's movement was really cool as well, their depiction of super speed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we don't have a speedster other than her right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, because Quicksilver's gone. But I really loved Aaron Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver. I know a lot of people don't, I think, share that opinion with me, but I love Aaron Taylor Johnson. So those are good picks. I would say there's no movie in Phase 4 that I don't enjoy. They're even the ones that I consider just okay. Well, Aaron's laughing because I have a lot of strong critiques for some of them. I mean, Black Widow's not my favorite.
I'm laughing because Thor: Love and Thunder. Come on.
I still like that movie. I think that...
No, you don't. You're just saying that to be different.
The second half of Thor: Love and Thunder... I'm not saying that to be different.
It was like a fourth of the movie was okay.
No, a half of the movie was good. Just no. You have to, if you can get over the cheesy, overly done, unnecessary comedy, then you can enjoy the movie. It's just the skit-like nature of comedy.
It was just they were joking too often to where you didn't take any of the action seriously, and it totally undermined Christian Bale's performance. Of
his gore.
It wasn't good.
If I could take out the Van Damme split, and I could take out the goats screaming, and I could take out the idea that he's in a relationship with Stormbreaker, then I think that the movie would stand.
That's like the entire movie.
That's just a bunch of corny jokes, though. I would probably take out Zeus too, even though he was pretty funny. That was over the top as well. I think that these are all good movies. I mean, does it stand up to Phase 3 in my opinion? No, it does not. Phase 3 is hard to beat, but we're starting over again from the beginning, and we're moving forward. They have a lot of stuff to set up. I think we're going to get Young Avengers. We're obviously going to get Thunderbolts. We're getting Hugh Jackman back. They've kind of set that up in small Easter eggs, like in She-Hulk and stuff like that. And with Madripoor appearing in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But so we solidified our favorite projects. I'm picking Spider-Man. You picked 3 somehow.
Yeah. Because I'm indecisive. I told you that most of the time I think Shang-Chi is my favorite.
Okay.
I told you that.
I think that's a really good pick. I love Shang-Chi. If you haven't watched the stunts, the behind-the-scenes videos of the stunts in Shang-Chi, do yourself a favor and look those up online. You can find them on YouTube. It's so incredible. Simu Liu is an incredible performer and talent, not only in terms of his acting, but he has other talents, dancing, choreography, martial arts. So check out those behind-the-scenes videos because they did some incredible stuff on Shang-Chi. The one scene where he catches the knife out of midair. They filmed that hundreds of times, and so they could do it practically. So Shang-Chi, they mixed the practical stunts with the CGI, which, I mean, a huge complaint for Phase 4 is the CGI and the editing departments and the special effects department being hugely overworked. Yeah. So I think that Shang-Chi balancing with some practical stuff is...
They just had so many things that had to come out all at once.
Yeah, and I mean, the Multiverse of Madness has some moments where the CGI is noticeably bad.
Yeah. All right, if you've been listening this far, we want to say thank you very much. Go ahead and head over to any of the podcast platforms and give us a 5-star rating. That's going to help push our podcast out there so more people can enjoy the content.
Yes, our giveaway has been completed as well. We are going to announce those winners in a separate video. Thank you so much to anyone who participated in it. We're going to be getting out those 3 comics to our 3 winners, and we'll hope to do another giveaway soon. Comment and let us know what you want to see for other topics, what you might want to see for other giveaways, and we'll hope to do another one so that you guys can have a chance to win more stuff.
So we went over a lot of our thoughts and opinions of Phase 4. We went over kind of where Phase 4 is heading with setting up all these different teams and stuff. Now let's kind of jump into all the numbers side of Phase 4 and the MCU as a whole. So starting off with Phase 4 here, we had a total budget of $1.2 billion. Okay? The total box office for Phase 4 was $4.8 billion. The highest grossing movie was Spider-Man No Way Home, which no surprise there. The one in second was Doctor Strange, coming in at $952 million.
What did Spider-Man make?
$1.9 billion. So it pretty much made up for almost half.
You see what I mean about Spider-Man being their Avengers movie this phase, because that's their biggest box office earner. That's their team up movie. I think they picked him for that as kind of like the face of Marvel, whether it's comics or movies. I think Spider-Man is kind of the face of Marvel.
Right.
But they are certainly winning in terms of numbers, as always. The MCU, when they put out a movie, it's been pretty hard for them to fail. So I think that I don't know if I want to say we're seeing a downward trend, but they put out less content,
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't made as much money in phase 4 as they did in phase 3. But also a lot of the stuff they're putting out on the TV platforms, we're not counting in terms of our revenue.
Yeah. In terms of like averages, it's pretty much on par with the other phases.
Which I think is a better way, the only way really we can measure it because of all the TV shows.
So let's kind of compare it to the other phases real quick. So we have an average budget for phase 4 of $200 million, which is kind of what we've been saying seems to be that new median number for these superhero films. We were even thinking maybe it's even closer, approaching 250, maybe now more so than the earlier phases. But yeah, so $200 million for the average budget of phase 4 compared to phase 1 of $168 million for their average budget for those films. We can compare phase 1 and phase 4 pretty close because they both have, phase 1 has 6 movies, phase 4 has 7 movies. So very similar in terms of volume. Phase 2 has only 5 movies. Wow.
Although strangely, phase 1 went from 2008 to 2012, and
Right,
phase
4
4
years.
is only 2 years.
Correct. So I guess in that sense, you can say that they're doing just as good, if not better.
Because they made the same amount of money in less time, or
Right.
yeah.
So they averaged box office for phase 1 was $634 million. The average for phase 4 was $803 million.
Jeez.
So they're definitely still trending upwards. The average budget's a little bit higher, but the average box office is much higher. Let's jump to phase 2 and kind of check out those numbers. Or here, back to phase 1. Total budget, $1 billion. Total revenue, $3.8 billion. Going into phase 2, total budget, $1 billion. And total box office, we have 4.7. So about $1 billion increase on the last phase. The average budget for phase 2, we have 211. So it went up quite a bit from phase 1 to phase 2.
So $211 million is the average they spent on each film in phase 2.
Correct. And then their average box office was just shy of $1 billion, coming in at $948 million.
That's insane. In phase 2, that means they had an average profit of like $700 million. Like,
correct.
I saw
compared to like 550 in the first phase.
Yeah, I saw an article. I think this was related to phase 3, but it said at the time of phase 3, Marvel's average was like for every 25 movies they had made up to that point, they had made $25 billion. So they're like, by the time of phase 3, with all the phase 3 figures bringing the budget up, the average for phases 1 through 3 is basically $1 billion per movie, which is insane. Like, studios that a movie makes $1 billion, like, do you know how excited those people are? Like,
right.
That their movie's a smash success, and that is like, they're like, Marvel's sitting back like par for the course. Like,
there's no other franchise that has this many movies that are making $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars and the Jurassic Park franchise are huge, but like you said, they're not doing it as repeatable.
Right, like in phase 3 alone, they had 6 movies that were above $1 billion in box office revenue.
Which, like,
and there's like 9 Star Wars movies, 10 Star Wars movies. You know, so like, it's very hard to compare this to anything else. It's definitely kind of on its own level.
Yeah, I mean, like not every movie can do what Aquaman does and make $1 billion.
Where did that movie come from?
The sleeper pick.
Phase 3 total budget went through the roof of $2.5 billion. So it went up by $1.5 billion compared to the phase beforehand. But again, a lot of projects came out in phase 3. The total box office for phase 3 was $14 billion. 14. That's crazy. Like I said earlier, they have 6 movies that are over $1 billion, 2 of which made $2 billion or more.
Good Lord.
That's insane.
That's coming up. So from phase 1 to phase 2, right? Their total box office increased $1 billion. From phase 3 to phase 4, $10 billion more dollars, 10 times more profitable from phase 2 to phase 3.
Wild, isn't it? It's
so wild I'm allergic to it.
Yeah, it's crazy the numbers that this franchise is bringing in.
$14 billion.
That's why it's so hard for people to be happy with phase 4. Like we're coming off of the peak to this point of the MCU, and we're like back at the bottom of the mountain again, starting over. You know, so like you said earlier, there's a lot of expectations going into these future projects, and some of those expectations are $14 billion worth, you know, which is crazy.
That's insane. So then how does phase 4 stack up against that?
Yeah, so phase 4 is kind of more on par with the other two. Looks very similar to phase 2. We got a total budget for phase 4 was $1.2 billion, and then the total box office was $4.8 billion.
Where'd you get that $4.8 billion figure from?
From the phase 4 box office?
Yeah, because Spider-Man alone in phase 4 made $1.9 billion.
Yeah, and the other movies didn't make that much.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we have Black Widow brought in $380 million, and then Shang-Chi brought in $432, Eternals $400, and then Doctor Strange $952, and then Thor: Love and Thunder $745, and then I have no numbers for Black Panther since it's still going on. I figured it would mess up all the averages and stuff.
Currently, it's grossed for $546 million worldwide. That's what the most current number.
So I don't even have that in the budget average either.
Okay.
Because it wasn't finished yet. I didn't want it to skew any of the numbers yet.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, like without Spider-Man, it's definitely a slow phase in terms of revenue for the MCU, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a new start, you know? Like we've been saying, it's a new start. It's hard to compare.
And they've got profitability from the TV shows as well in terms of Disney Plus subscriptions that aren't factored in here. So that's additional millions that they're making. It's hard to argue that like a huge sum of money for Disney Plus isn't coming from MCU, because that's the only place you can go to watch Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. So they definitely have subscribers solely on there for that purpose and nothing else.
Absolutely. And even just being able to watch all of the other movies too is a big attraction to Disney Plus. You know, like having them all in one place, having them all in order. Like I said, I was watching Moon Knight this last weekend, and I went down there and they had a phase 4 column, and they were all there in order of phase 4. You know, so it's like super easy.
Digestible, and they present it to you in a way where you can just watch the show. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Where do you want to go from here? What are your expectations moving forward? What do we have to look forward to?
I think we have a lot to look forward to coming up, especially in phase 6, because we're going to have 2 Avengers movies in one phase that are basically coming out a year apart, it looks like, which is incredibly, incredibly exciting. We're going to start the Kang era. So we're starting the multiverse saga, which has been sprinkled and now just completely poured on to the MCU's plot. So it's very, very exciting. We're going to get to see a lot of alternate universe storylines. I expect to see the X-Men enter the world, Fantastic Four. What I think is very interesting is some fan theories I've seen online that are talking about the artifacts being connected to Kang the Conqueror, because the Ant-Man and the Wasp's Quantumania trailer kind of gave us a taste of what Kang the Conqueror's world looks like in the quantum realm. And we see these rings with kind of spectral imaging on them, glowing with like the purple and blue. And it's very similar to the appearance on Miss Marvel's bangle and the 10 rings with Shang-Chi. So potentially those artifacts are going to tie in some way. We always know that they're sowing the seeds of something in the MCU. The Infinity Stones were all throughout the first two and then into the third phase. So potentially these artifacts could be something big coming up. I'm excited to see where that mystery lies.
Okay, that's cool.
What are you excited for and what do you expect to see? I know I said a lot of what we expect to see already.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Do you think we'll see Wanda come back?
Ooh, I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so.
Seems in line with some comic theories as well. Like the Young Avengers, she's involved in some of those series.
I feel like she'll probably have a little redemption story, you know. I don't think she's unredeemable because she was
corrupted by the Darkhold.
Exactly, yeah. So I think there's still a lot of fans out there. I think Olsen's a great actor too.
Oh my gosh, so, phenomenal in that movie, yeah.
Yeah, I think she'd be back for sure. I was actually scrolling through our list of all of our episodes. We did an episode on D23, which was episode 9, so like way back in the day. We did an episode kind of going over some of the future projects that were announced and stuff like that. So if you want to go back and check that out, you can. We've also done a MCU rankings list where we ranked every MCU movie. That was, I believe, episode 23, so you can check that out as well and see which are Andrew's favorite, which are my favorite of the MCU movies.
Aaron hates Thor Ragnarok. I like Thor Ragnarok.
Exactly. We had a few disagreements in there, and then it kind of merged together to where our top numbers were, or our top movies were pretty close to the same. Yeah, moving forward, what am I most excited for? I'm excited to see the two Avengers kind of come back to back.
Yes,
you know, like
absolutely.
I mean, those are definitely the two announced projects that I'm looking forward to the most. But then I'm also very excited to see what they're going to do with Spider-Man, because we haven't heard much of like what's going on with all that, or at least I haven't. And he's my favorite superhero, so I'm always excited for a new Spider-Man project to come out. Now that no one really knows who he is, and they're kind of developing like the ground level superheroes and stuff, I hope we get to see him kind of in New York City a little bit more, kind of being the neighborhood hero, you know.
Looking at, I mean, Tony set the stage in the first movie, right, with kind of annihilating the idea of a secret identity,
right,
which is a huge part of Spider-Man's character. Mm-hmm. So I think we might see the dawning of a new era in new phases where secret identities play a bigger role, because like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, they don't have secret identities, but it's a big part of Spider-Man's character. So maybe we'll see that for a few other characters. We've kind of reinvigorated his secret identity with no one knowing who he is. So maybe that'll tie into more characters too.
It's a restart after taking his mask off so much and Far From Home.
But speaking of the future of specific characters, we have got some unfortunate news recently in the documentary that Chris Hemsworth filmed that he holds 2 genes that are precursors to the development of Alzheimer's. And so if you're unfamiliar with Alzheimer's, it is one of the leading causes of dementia worldwide, and it is a terrifying condition where the afflicted person starts to have difficulty with their brain storing and processing memories. So it's a very serious and scary disease that he's now having to come to grips with, having a high likelihood of developing as he grows older. And he's said publicly that he's going to take a break from acting, presumably spend time with his family. He has a wife and children. And we'll see what that means for the future. He's also made a statement saying that he thinks if they close the book on Thor's storyline, that would mean the death of Thor. So he thinks that Thor may die at some point in the MCU. And all this is really sad for the character and for the actor that we love. So I think that there's a lot of implications for this, and what do you think we're going to see going forward for Thor?
Yeah, this came out for the news on his adventure series with Disney Plus called Limitless, I believe. I haven't watched it yet, but of course seen the news, just like yourself. And I think it's good that he's like taking a break, and it's definitely like a wake up call of like, wow, really enjoy the little things in life, like, and kind of let go of the little stressors in life that big picture don't mean anything.
Yeah, put them in perspective too, that health is king, really. Like, you can have everything in the world, and I'm sure that Chris Hemsworth would trade all of his success and fame to, ensure he could have good health. So just always make sure that we're all taking care of ourselves. We can't enjoy any of the other things life has to offer if we're not pursuing good health.
Yeah. Also, this doesn't mean that he was diagnosed.
Yes. It's a precursor test.
Still a possibility that it never actually happens, but apparently he has two genes that are very rare to have together, and both have a likelihood of developing Alzheimer's, sorry. So it's a possibility for sure for him. But he seems like he's a healthy guy, and now that he's taken some time away from acting and stuff, like, I'm sure he's going to try to manage it the best that he can. I just kind of hope that it doesn't interfere with him going about life how he would,
living life to the fullest.
Because I feel like knowing something like that, yes, it can help you prepare, but at the same time, it could also cause more anxiety.
Yeah.
Like for me, it probably caused more anxiety. I would rather not know.
Yeah, it's a big debate for a lot of people of whether they would want to know something like that or have it kind of surprise them.
Right.
Because something like Alzheimer's, where we don't know as much about it, there's very limited capabilities of what you could do to prevent it. If you were pre-diabetic, for example, there's a lot of things that you can do to avoid moving from pre-diabetes into type 2 diabetes, but it's a little different with like a complex neurological condition like this. So
yeah, in terms of what's going to happen with the character of Thor, I don't think they should recast Thor, at least not right away. Maybe like go a roundabout way, kind of like they're doing with T'Challa,
I think that the character introduced in Love and Thunder, I think she could take up the mantle of Thor. She's wielding, Stormbreaker. She's incredibly powerful. She could take those reins eventually. Someone has to one day, because I'm sure Chris Hemsworth, regardless of any health conditions, doesn't want to play that one part forever. He's obviously not immortal like Thor seems to be.
Right, exactly. So if he dies in the next one, I think it will be a good wrap up to his story. I mean, he's thousands and thousands of years old, so it'd be a good set of closure for him as the actor, and then also us as the fans. Very much like Iron Man passing. As much as I love Iron Man, I think him passing away was definitely the right move. It created a sense of impact of what happened in Endgame.
There's a time for all stories to end.
Right.
And if you push them too far, then it devalues everything that came before.
Right, exactly. So obviously we hope Chris Hemsworth the best, and that it doesn't end up developing at all, but seems like he's taking care of himself and his family, so that's good.
Yeah, he seems like a good guy.
Yeah. As far as other projects, I'm kind of just excited to see them happen as they happen. I don't like trying to dive in and figure out what's going to happen next and all that stuff. I'd rather it just kind of come towards me and enjoy the story first, and then kind of develop opinions from there,
Yeah, and we've got plenty to look forward to. I mean, with just what they've announced alone, there's a lot coming your way.
Yeah,
and
we haven't even mentioned Daredevil.
Born Again, yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
My final question for you right now would be, what character that was introduced was your favorite in Phase 4, brand new introduction?
Moon Knight, for sure.
I thought you were going to say Shang-Chi.
Moon Knight.
I'll choose Shang-Chi then.
Okay. What was your favorite? What was your original favorite?
I was probably going to pick Moon Knight originally. I really love Moon Knight and Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight.
For you. Who is right now the best actor or actress in the MCU?
Currently, like, continuing to play a character, like, alive, moving forward.
Yeah.
I
can give you mine.
Go ahead. Give me yours, and I'm going to look through the movies.
Oscar Isaac is Moon Knight. I think there's a lot of depth to the character, so that in itself gives the actor the opportunity to portray something that's a little more complex. But I think Oscar Isaac did a phenomenal job of displaying the different personalities and the conflict within and all that stuff. I really hope we get a Moon Knight movie, or at least he shows up in a Moon Knight movie to where we can kind of see the action side of things, kind of be at the level that we want it to be. But you can tell right away who he was by just looking at his mannerisms and how he presents himself, his voice and stuff. You know right away that that was Steven and that was Mark. And we still have yet to be introduced to the third character as well.
Oh, yeah. Jake?
Yeah.
I think that it's a tough question to answer. There's a lot of ways I can measure this, right? So Oscar Isaac, I think, is an incredible pick. He's a phenomenal talent. I really love him in Ex Machina. The man can act. But I think the other two people that I'm looking at in here, especially in terms of promise, are Tom Holland and Florence Pugh. Because after watching Don't Worry, Darling, I was very impressed with Florence Pugh as an actress. And I think she really, led that film in an incredible way and took the reins and, really was a true star. And you follow her as an audience member. I think she's incredible. And I think Tom Holland's performance after the stages of grief going through losing Aunt May, his tears as he's just sitting alone looking at the billboard, everything from that to his rage telling Green Goblin that he wants to kill him himself. Tom Holland's obviously an incredible performer. Those are the other two people I would look at outside of Oscar Isaac. They're phenomenal.
Good picks for sure. All right. Anything else you want to say about the MCU?
Well, we're excited for them to continue to give us reasons to show up to the studio and talk for hours.
For sure.
So thanks to the MCU for all the content you provide. Even when we critique you, we love you.
Last fact before we head out. The total budget of the MCU, box office. The total box office. Do you have a guess?
Well, we said the couple phases. This only counts movies, not
movies.
Okay, because if you count toys, it's going to be unbelievably higher.
Just the box office. Movie theater tickets.
Movie theater tickets, I'm going to say 28 billion.
Dang, that was pretty good. So 27,381,073,037.
Can't forget the last $37. 27 billion?
27.3 billion.
God, that's so profitable. Woo! God, they're so
Total
good.
budget 5.7 billion.
Yeah, so that's like 22 billion profit.
Crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to keep making these movies until that number changes.
George Lucas sold Star Wars for $4 billion. Imagine what
they could sell this for.
Yeah, crazy. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Backseat Directing. We post a new episode every Monday and Thursday. We appreciate it. Go ahead and give us a like and a share and a comment down below. Andrew, anything else?
Nope, that's it for today. Thanks for listening.
All right. And
that's a wrap.